Chris Trondsen, you are here. And we have a theme song. We just let that play for a while the numbers spool.
We need to do choreography. Come up with
We should.
dance.
Sprinkler.
The grocery cart.
Yeah. Lawnmower.
The wave.
You know, this song is by Paul Amelia out of Ireland, who has OCD and was a guest on the show. So.
I think anybody who makes a theme song should be a guest on your show automatically.
Absolutely. Paul's awesome. Paul does a podcast, a webinar too, on music. And so I did one with him on OCD, and I did another just where we talked about our favorite bands, which was really fun.
Do we like the same music as them, or we didn't?
Yes. Paul and I have some similar tastes. Yeah.
I was gonna say, what if he hated your type of music and you hated his? That'd be an awkward conversation.
Yeah, you know, I'm okay though, because I appreciate the passion, right? I mean, you may not like my music, and I may not like yours, but I can appreciate that you like it and the passion that you have for it, right?
Unless it's polka, then I can't.
Sorry to all the Germans and Polish people we have just offended with the comment about polka.
It's like all of a sudden that whole area just drops off of OCD. Like,
yes.
No, sorry, over.
Exactly. Well, Chris Trondsen, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
You and I are like peas in a pod when we do this thing, so it is just always fun to have you here and to discuss what's going on in the world of OCD. And we're like the yin and the yang in some ways, right? Though you treat OCD, which thank you, by the way, for doing, because it's wonderful. But I've always appreciated your openness about what you've gone through, how you've gotten where you are today, the struggles, the trials, the tribulations, the successes. And I think that that's a great thing for people to see, that you can struggle and you can do good, right?
Absolutely. I mean, and I think that's why I do it. My biggest takeaway is that I know that just seeing one person out there who has OCD and has gotten better and can manage it and go on and treat it, or go on and do whatever they love, that hope is, I think, what gets a lot of people through. So I'm just honored to be one of the voices that reminds people you can get better.
Yeah.
I do have to start with an apology. I know that it said Liz McAvell was going to be there today. I'm not as pretty as her. My hair isn't as long and blonde. So everybody who came just to see a pretty person is very disappointed right now, but they'll have to do with this. I'm sorry, folks. Sorry.
And that is not a comment about BDD or anything. That is
just I'm not going to be Liz today. So there's like 5 guys that are like, bummer, I'm out.
Yeah, I'm out. That's not Liz. Yeah. Liz was unavoidably detained. So we have a pitch hitter in for tonight, which fits for what she's doing tonight.
Absolutely. And me being the sports expert, that really relates.
You and I, we were debating for who knows less about sports, me or Chris. Yeah.
We're tied right now. So
I think we're tied. Yeah. All right. Well, as always, Chris, you know the drill. I kind of run through a bunch of things on the side there, and we kind of take our respective takes on the answers. But please feel free, scroll through. If there's any of those questions that you're seeing that just hit something for you, let's pop it up, let's throw it out, and let's discuss and see where we go. All right.
Awesome. I'm excited.
All right, good. Well, we'll go with the first one, just because it's there at the first. Natural B says, I have ROCD and deal with lots of fake crushes. Pretty much anyone I talk to, and I keep getting thoughts about calling my partner when whatever name my OCD is obsessing about. Any advice? I like that one.
Yeah, so man, ROCD was probably the last major subtype I dealt with. So I really was able to manage OCD. And so I didn't have this specific fear calling my partner the wrong name, but a lot of similar things, like afraid that when I saw my partner, I was going to be thinking about someone else or things like that. And the biggest advice or the direction that I can give you, Natural B, is that that's what OCD wants you to fear. OC is giving you that catastrophic outcome that you're going to call your partner the name of the crush that you're having. They're going to get offended. They're going to break up with you. You'll be alone forever and you'll never find love and you'll be stressed out forever. And if you buy into that whole story and allow yourself to mentally compulse and ruminate all day, that fear is going to feel real. And in fact, the more you try not to think of a name or say a name, the more likely you're going to slip it out anyways. So I always think of like living in that uncertainty. Bring in that name yourself, write it on a post-it, have it in your car, say it out loud to yourself, literally mentally say it in your head before talking to your partner, and take a risk. Maybe you do say the name and you break up, or maybe it never happened, but you know what you're doing right now is actually going to make it more likely to happen.
Yeah. And then what would happen if you said the wrong name, right?
Yeah, let's see.
Not that I'm telling you to go do it, but just that notion of, I think we see all the time that we build things up in our head to be far worse than almost all of the actual events turn out to be.
Everything I worried about with my relationship OCD never was the problem. We broke up for a non-even OCD worry. So everything I worried about wasn't even the reason we broke up. We broke up for a completely different reason. So it often is just a lot of wasted and discomfort time that you feel compelled to do, but the treatment allows you to push back against it.
You know, in some ways, I love some of those farmers insurance commercials where they talk about, yep, we've seen that, you know, where you could spend so much time thinking about all the things that could happen. And then the thing that does happen is the thing that you probably didn't spend any time thinking about. And then that happens, right? And that could go two ways. One, you can be afraid, oh, well, that means I need to think of more things that could happen. Or you can recognize there's just no way to ever think of everything that's going to happen. And you could just live your life knowing that, well, I have the ability to handle things. And that's really the goal more than anything else. We're not here to predict everything. I don't think anybody can, right?
My ROCD was all about, I have to have like eyes for my partner only, and they have to have eyes for me. Like we have to like only like each other. I can't have crushes or thoughts about other people. We broke up because they got a job in a different state and moved away. So it's the biggest waste of 2 years of obsessions and ruminations and compulsions. And it was all about getting a better job and moving to Pennsylvania. So it was a waste.
Yeah. That's a great point, though, Chris. There are people who probably say to you, I've heard too, who want to justify their OCD and say, well, it helps me. So having OCD, having really gone through the throes of it and coming out on the other side with the treatment, which I know you deal with OCD still every day. It's not like it's gone or anything, but looking back, were there points in your OCD where you thought, yeah, this is really a good thing and it's a good thing it's here and it's helping me, and now you look back and go, well, that was a lie?
Oh yeah, that's the biggest lie we all believe. I mean, I had a lot of health OCD, health anxiety, so I was always healthier because of OCD. You know, I ate healthier foods, or I slept certain hours, or I went to the doctors when needed, or in school, that was one of my biggest things, perfectionism. Oh, that's why I get my good grades, because I always overthink things, or, you know, analyze things before turning it in, or ask a lot of questions. And so I always bought into the idea that I was healthier, I was smarter, I was stronger because of it. All that was a lie. I mean, once I got better and went back, you know, went to grad school without OCD was 48 times easier than my undergrad. And that's not how it's supposed to be. So I found that OCD just made things more difficult, more painful. And lastly, people will sometimes say, oh, I'm glad I have OCD because it's made me a stronger person. No, the decision to wake up each day and fight it and to get better and to really, you know, push back against it, that's why you're stronger. Give yourself credit. Don't give the disorder credit ever.
Yeah. Yeah. Smurfette is going to start intensive virtual treatment from Amita. Awesome. The program that I started many, many years ago. It's still going strong. So that's great. How best to get support from friends who don't know much about OCD during treatment? Love that question. Great.
Yeah, what I learned in my own recovery is, what do I need? Ask yourself what it is you need, because sometimes you hear from people, oh, you have to send them articles and educate them and stuff. That might not be what you needed. I didn't want that from my friends. I didn't need to sit there and talk about OCD. I had a therapist for that. My mom was very instrumental in my support. I just needed to go to somebody's house sometimes and just have fun, because my life was in my head was so not fun. So what I would say is, first and foremost, discover what it is you need, what kind of support you want, And then who in your life do you feel comfortable opening up enough from to get that? So if you really do want people that you're going to talk about obsessions and compulsions and open up to them about it, sure. Sending them to one of Dr. McGrath's, live streams is a great way for them to understand the variants of different OCD subtypes and education about it and all that stuff. And there's videos in the IOCDF. If you want it to be more just support and somebody, you don't have to go as much detail. Just let them know you're going into a program, you're struggling, and would love somebody to check in on you via text every once in a while. So I think asking yourself what you need.
Yeah. It brings me to the movie that you did with your mom, and maybe share a little bit about that, because I think that was really powerful to talk about and to hear from your mom and the way she reacted to your OCD and how, families struggle with being able to help someone because they go through am I doing this the right way? And inevitably they give too much reassurance at times and they get involved in safety behaviors, and then they don't realize the OCD's duped them into doing this. And so, what was that like just for you in your own kind of journey with OCD?
Yeah, no, I was fortunate. I mean, my mom was such an instrumental part in me getting better, and I would not be here without her. I mean, I was such a severe case to the point that the thought of researching a OCD specialist and getting help was beyond where I was in comprehension. So having her really jump in there and help me was so instrumental. However, she didn't know how to help. So she was great in finding therapists and stuff, but she was also answering my 4 a.m. reassurance calls. She was calming me down. Everything's going to be okay. So when she found out that that's not the way for her to help me, and it was actually to refrain from the reassurance and the enabling, that is when we had the conversation with my therapist of why this was important for my well-being. So having my mom, that's what I needed. I have a sister who's close in age, and she was great and didn't even understand OCD. She just was the first person in my family. Most of my family was exhausted from me. Why is he doing this? It's so much. He's exhausting. He's doing this for attention. This is annoying. I mean, I had so many family members that it took years to forgive, but my sister didn't get it. But she was the first person in my family outside my mom to be like, "Are you okay? Is there anything I could do? Let's talk. Let's laugh. Let's watch a show together." But my mom always says, she didn't reach out and ask for help for herself, and she was burnt out. So if she would do it again, she would find support, even if it was just friends to hang out with and things like that.
Yeah. And you've got to appreciate people that don't give up, right? There's someone on here, I will keep them nameless, but her son went outside for the first time in almost 15 years.
Wow. That's amazing.
Yeah. Just one day went outside just recently, and man, she was happy. I mean, just so things happen, right? Things can happen. And sometimes it's a long haul, unfortunately, but you can get there. That's
absolutely
great. A reminder to everyone, tonight's webinar brought to you by NoCD. NoCD, a downloadable app you can get through Google Play or iOS, or reach out to us at nocd.com if you're looking for teletherapy across the United States. We're also in Canada, Australia, and the UK as well. Another ROCD one, so I'm glad you're here tonight, Chris, actually, because that's really helpful.
Absolutely.
Can ROCD cause you to lose all your feelings for a person and not be able to see a future with your significant other, and the only way out is to leave?
Absolutely, Sue. I mean, the biggest thing that I now know after being in healthy relationships, once the ROCD is managed, is typically in a relationship, you don't have extreme feelings like that unless an event happens. So if you're having, and it could be an immediate event, like somebody cheats on you or steals money from you in a relationship, or it could be an overtime event, like maybe you're finding that your partner is disinterested in stuff. But with my OCD, and it sounds like with Sue as well, is like I was in my relationship, everything's great, we go out. I remember one time we went to like Universal, maybe not Universal, maybe it was like Disney or something, but like one of those Halloween haunts, and had the best time ever. And it was so cute. Like on the way home, we're holding hands in the car on the way back. I get home in bed and I was like, did I even have fun? Do I even like them? Why did we even go out? I don't even think I want to be in the relationship anymore. Yeah. Oh my God. And I stayed up all night trying to convince myself I still loved them, but the OCD was giving me reasons not. So that's what I found is like, I could be happy one moment and second later think I didn't want to be with them anymore. And then I'd get back to see them the next day. Oh, I'm back in love and everything's great. Very highs and lows. And so what I learned to do is to not make the mistake of trying to investigate it, figure it out and get clarity, because that just made me more confused.
I've noticed that OCD is not a fan of the middle ground. It's all or nothing.
Well, your relationship has to be all or nothing. Either you guys are fighting and hate each other and should break up, or you're going to, vacations together and everything's great, and somebody should film your relationship for an ad campaign, right? Like
you should be the picture in the frame at the store.
That comes with, right?
Yeah.
Just buy the frame and just have it and pretend. Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I was finding is that, sure, if both of us were just watch a movie laying there on the couch and it wasn't that great, I would start to question, it's just, we're boring. We're just watching TV. This isn't a relationship. I should break up. So that mistake that I made for a long time was trying to figure out and make these urgent or quick decisions because of something that OCD was saying. So now I know in relationships, I'm not going to contemplate that stuff unless there's a big thing that if I told 1,000 people, they'd say, oh yeah, the relationship's pretty much fizzled out and going to die. Not just, we were fine an hour ago and now I feel like we're not.
Yeah. Hellos from Natalie, who says she's here to support everyone tonight. Says exposure's super hard, but it gets better. Thanks. Love Lana says, hey guys. Hey. Kaylee says, hey OCD community. Hey Dr. McGrath and Chris. Hey Kaylee. All right, let's go here. So I treat OCD like an annoying phone call. If you keep answering that phone call, it will keep calling you back. Yes. But if you ignore OCD's phone call, eventually learns to stop bothering you. Yeah.
I love using analogies like this because I think people can understand a phone call more than they can understand intrusive thoughts. But absolutely. I mean, I don't know about you, Patrick, something happened to where some law in California must have not passed, because now I'm getting so many spam calls and everybody else is saying that. So I don't know if it's a California thing or a worldwide thing.
It seems my car warranty is out of suddenly. Yeah.
Over and over again. So when you visualize it, I mean, that's really what OCD is. It wants you to freak out, get annoyed, change your number, block it, all that. But if instead you just recognize that the phone is ringing, but really don't allow yourself to have this emotional charged response, like it does get like that. It's like, oh yeah, I get spam calls from time to time. I don't even really pay attention anymore.
Yeah, I've said OCD is like an annoying little brother going, I'm not touching you. I'm not touching you. And after a while, they're like, oh, they're not getting annoyed. Okay, well, I guess I'll leave them alone.
But you got to use annoying sisters, because I have 2 sisters that were obnoxious at times. I don't have a brother. So.
I don't either. So yeah, I did have an annoying little sister. She's fine now, but boy, she was annoying. Although she would say the same, that she had an annoying brother. I would just think to stay.
Older brothers are never annoying, and I don't want to hear it.
That's right. I agree with you 100%. Can you be fixated on the same obsession and have compulsions around that one thing with OCD for 8 months? Yeah. How about 8 years, maybe?
I was gonna say it could be 8 years. It could be 8 decades. Well, maybe not 8 decades. Well,
actually, I've had a 7-decade one.
Yeah.
That's my record. 87 years old with the same fear.
Yeah, no,
since he was 17.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, you can have it for a very long time, especially if you're feeding it with compulsions. Compulsions are telling your brain that it's something worth thinking about, focusing on, and worrying about. So, some of my compulsions were around when I was a kid, and I was still doing it as an adult. So, yes, definitely. And that's why we got to stop feeding it, or it's going to keep coming around.
Even that person I treated who was 87 got better after a couple of weeks of therapy when they decided, okay, I might not live much longer. I'd like a few years without OCD influencing my life. And lo and behold, they got better once they stopped giving into the compulsions.
I wonder if you had this experience. I think what's sad too is probably because they're older, mental health wasn't treated when they were younger. So they didn't know that they could get better. And then it just became decades and decades of reinforcement until they found you.
Not only that, but when they were younger, those thoughts were sins. So now it's years of believing they were sinning instead of anybody recognizing it as obsessive compulsive disorder. Yeah. Which we see happen too. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Still happens, sadly.
Let's see. Wakabe says, love the content. Kaylee says, dig in the fireplace in the background. Very nice. Thank you.
It's 100% real, Kaylee. Keep believing that.
Or
I can do an aquarium. I can do a ocean. I should have switched it up. So.
Oh, aquarium. That sounds fun too. Do you just press a button and it's a totally different thing?
I mean, I pull out my fireplace and replace it with a real aquarium.
Yeah. There you go. All right. Can OCD make you question and doubt your values and who you are? Yes. I keep having these I'll go with violent, intrusive thoughts, and they just make me question if I really want to act like them on them. Well, that sounds like a standard harm OCD if I've ever heard one. What do you think there, Chris?
Yeah, I think the scariest thing that happened to me in my treatment is most of my OCD that came forth wasn't as much intrusive thoughts, that a lot of checking, contamination, magical thinking, a lot of harm to my mom, but it was more so like magical thinking if I didn't wake up at a time, stuff like that. But as I was in treatment and I was getting better on that, OCD completely switched on me, and I was having intrusive thoughts of having sex with family members. It was harming my sisters. A big one was pushing my grandma down the stairs and killing her. I'd get intrusive thoughts when I was in line at the grocery store that I was going to just hit a kid or hit a person in the head, or like try to have sex or seduce a stranger, like really unsettling things. And I didn't know that was OCD because that was not really a conversation with my therapist initially out the gate. When I finally opened up to her, like, hey, I think I need different treatment because this stuff is happening, I learned it was a subtype and found it out. But absolutely, I would say the biggest thing is I started to question me as a person. You start to have shame and guilt and disgust with your own being. Once I learned that OCD is ego dystonic, that these thoughts were so not what I wanted to have and against my very character, it finally allowed me to treat these thoughts similarly to how I was treating the rest of OCD. So hang in there. I know it's the most uncomfortable part of OCD and having violent intrusive thoughts, but when you treat it something outside of you and face it, you start to detach from it. The compulsions just makes it feel more real.
And Chris, I think you'll agree with this, but when we're together again at a live conference, if the two of us are walking down a flight of stairs, we will both think about throwing each other down the stairs while we're walking down the stairs together.
Am I in your will?
Yeah.
then it's going to be more intrusive.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not making those thoughts go away. It's not caring that those thoughts even exist. Right.
Absolutely. You have to do that. You have to get to a point where bring them on yourself. I mean, that was the most helpful thing. I know it sounds crazy when I first was told that, but I started thinking about it myself. I knew I was going to think about harming my grandma that day. So why wait for OCD to punch me out of nowhere with it? Why not bring it on myself? Good day to kill grandma today. And I joke with it, use humor, and it started getting to a point where it wasn't as scary.
And when you say, can OCD, back to the question, make you question and doubt your values and who you are? Doubt is the important word in that. It's not that you become a different person because of OCD. You start to doubt the person that you are because of OCD.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I didn't morph into a different individual. I started questioning. And then the more I questioned, the more doubt, the more likely I was to listen to OCD. I mean, that's why it doesn't work. Is suddenly I was susceptible to OCD's messaging about how horrible I was because I was so confused who I was because I was questioning it at all times.
Yeah. 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 There had to be points when you were feeling at some of your worst times that did you feel like you didn't know who you were or how to define yourself or anything like that? Did that happen for you too?
Yeah, and I'm passionate about actually speaking about, I did a talk at the OCD SoCal conference about this. I think that was the hardest thing is once I was like done with the intense component of my treatment, I mean, I still had treatment, but the main part, I was so lost. I didn't know who I was because I was a shell of myself at that point. I'd given up dating, friends, sports, traveling, everything I was. I went from having mostly normal and positive thoughts, I guess, to always having negative thoughts, killing, sex, all that. So it was really difficult to feel good about myself and to even know who I was. The treatment is what got that for me. And then after treatment, it was re-engaging into life and recreating who I was based on values, which allowed me to start to reconnect with who I was, my goals, my passion and stuff. But yeah, I mean, OCD really messes with who you are as a person and your identity for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a reason it's called the doubting disorder, right? I mean, it is going to constantly instill in you what if questions. Right? If your goal is to have a 100% guaranteed certain answer, treatment doesn't work. No matter what anybody does for you, because I mean, I've always said this: you could go to 100 doctors, and 99 of them could say you're fine, and one could say, I think you're fine, but there might be this one, maybe, and boom, OCD is on that, and it's like, I knew it. oh my God, I'm dying, and jumping to that worst case scenario, and believing, see, because finally this one doctor told the truth that there could be something, and all the other ones were lying to me and just trying to protect me from myself.
And because I had health OCD, I could relate to that, because a lot of times doctors will say something to kind of CYA, right? Like they're gonna, yeah, of course, most likely you'll be fine. Most likely.
Yeah, well, most likely.
Most likely mean, can we please get clearer? And then
that's not enough.
Yeah, so it's one of those things that they might say something flippantly or nonchalant or just kind of say standard language to protect themselves, but OCD is going to snatch that up and pretty soon think that you're unsafe or you're going to get hurt.
I'm working on trying different, not harder. Don't try harder, try different, as I like to say to everybody. Yes, they are baby steps, and I wish I was moving forward more. Well, yeah, they are baby steps, and that is fine. I mean, what about Bob made fun of that a little bit in the movie, but the reality is that that's why we look at things in a hierarchy point of view, and we talk about not diving into the deep end of the pool and figuring out how to swim, but putting a toe in the water and see how it feels. We are not here to scare you away. And there are people who have been flooded and then are like, well, I'm done for a while. There's no treatment for a little while now. I need to back off and step away. So I think you have to celebrate the baby steps, and they are a victory.
Yeah, I remember a big thing for me was cooking my own food. I know that sounds pitiful, but I got so bad that my dad was cooking my food, cutting it up. When there was extreme times, he was even feeding me because I was so afraid of touching my own food, felt contaminated, not clean enough. I was going to get sick. So I remember the first time I made my own food. I'll still remember it was a bowl of Raisin Bran, which isn't very of any. I couldn't make a souffle, right? I had to make Raisin Bran. That's all I had. But I remember that first bowl of Raisin Bran I made myself probably took hours, but I just remember being so happy. And it was so nice that my therapist got it, because I think if I would have told anybody else, like, I made a bowl of cereal today, everybody would have been like, okay, weirdo. Like, it's not going to get many thumbs up on Facebook, right? So it definitely, it celebrate those successes. I don't think there's anything as a small victory. Everything is a victory. You got to remember that for sure.
OCD doesn't want to recognize victories, though. OCD loves to celebrate defeats, but OCD doesn't want to recognize victories, because if it does, then it recognizes that you're doing something to get it to go away. And OCD doesn't want to go away. OCD wants to stick around forever.
Absolutely. It doesn't want you to be happy that there's a possibility that you could get better from it. So it's not going to celebrate it.
I've talked to a lot of people about OCD doesn't care about you or your friends or your family. OCD is very selfish. It cares about itself. But the lie is, from OCD, hey, Chris, if you just do everything I tell you, your life's going to be awesome. So just follow my instructions and directions and all will be great.
Yes. OCD is like Kanye. I think Kanye likes Kanye more than anyone else likes Kanye more than he likes anybody else. So OCD is the same. It loves itself. It will always love itself. It's not your big fan. It won't cheer you on.
Yeah. There's definitely not a cheering squad for you from OCD, unless you do everything OCD wants you to do. And then it says, yay, great job. But that lasts for about a minute. And then it's, oh, wait a minute, maybe you could have done better. Let's do it again, just to make sure and stay safe. Yeah.
And you wouldn't put it up with that from a real person in real life. Like if you did something for a friend, they're like, yeah, thanks for helping me move, but can you also paint my house? It's like you'd cut them off. So cut OCD off.
Yeah, and then thanks for painting my house, but how about reshingling the roof? And there's OCD is infinite in its wants and desires and its needs. It is never satisfied. It is never satiated. It is always hungry for more. I've recently called OCD the koala of disorders, because koalas eat eucalyptus and that's it. They don't eat anything else. And OCD eats compulsions and that's it. It doesn't eat anything else. And so it just wants more and more compulsions, but it's never going to get enough of them to feel full and satisfied.
Okay, so no, I should stop feeding koalas steaks and burgers.
Okay, yes. Don't feed your koala steaks and burgers.
They were attacking me, and I was like, "What's going on?" So now it makes sense. They're like people like this.
Tina, eat your steak. Yeah. So
I love that movie.
Yeah, or maybe to go movies, Little Shop of Horrors, right? Feed me, Seymour. You can, because you can't feed me enough, Seymour. I need more all the time. I always need more.
OCD.
Yeah. All right, let's pick a number. Anonymous 23 says, I have intrusive thoughts OCD, and I'm wondering if it's normal to start to feel like my behaviors are being expressed outwardly. Like I fear something and I start to display the behavior. Well, there's some thought action fusion for you right there, right?
You just took the words out of my mouth. I was like, thought action fusion. And then you said it. We're like this.
Thought action fusion. There it is. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that's definitely what it is. People will freak out. I mean, I was the same way. I mean, when I started having really bad intrusive thoughts about harming family members, I remember one time I got very frustrated with my grandma because I was living with her when I was at my worst with my dad and my youngest sister. And I remember getting very frustrated with her. And it was that it's like, well, you never got mad at your grandma this way. And now you're getting angry because you're getting closer to wanting to like give an excuse of why you can kill her and justify. So it is that. It's this idea that the more I think about it, the more likely I'm doing it, the worse that it is. And you almost feel like you could take yourself down to the local police station and get arrested for your thinking. And so the biggest thing that helped me is stop treating thoughts like they were facts. So I allowed thoughts to hang out. I pictured my head like an apartment complex. So I knew like thoughts were going to come in and kind of chill, or maybe an Airbnb is a better thought. Like they're going to come, rent a room, a motel, chill for a little bit, and then pass. And it's my job to just let them do what they're going to do. I don't have to engage. I don't have to ignore, just let them be. But yes, you're going to start when doing that at first and it gets worse. You are going to start thinking like, am I this kind of person? Am I doing this? I noticed that I slightly did this, or I looked at a kid for too long. Am I starting to become a pedophile? Once again, if you latch onto that and start to analyze and try to change behavior, it's just going to get worse.
Yeah. Analysis paralysis. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Were there any that were sticking out for you at all, Chris, as you were looking?
Well, I feel like if I do find something, then I'm stepping on your toes. So let me.
No. My toes are unsteppable. I've got steel-toed boots on, so you go right ahead, Chris. Please feel free.
Sorry, there's just a question that I am confused by, so I'm going to skip that one.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if they meant to write. Maybe it was autocorrect. So I'm like, what?
Sometimes that happens. You get a little autocorrect and it throws things off a little bit.
No, it is. So I'm like, let's click on it and find out. But then I was like, ugh. I like this one because I always like ROCD questions. So myself and I at 517, I can't do anything cool like you can, right? And make them pop up.
717 on my end.
Oh, so 717 by myself and I.
There it is. Got it.
Yeah. Ooh, you're so quick. Is it normal to struggle having relationships with OCD? I keep failing and I have a lot of shame and guilt. So I would say with OCD in general, it's very all or nothing. I don't know if this is what myself and I was alluding to, but the reason I connected with this question is because the way that my relationship OCD was, it wasn't only in relationships that were romantic, it was friendships. So what would happen is I'd make a friend, and the second I saw something not go well, maybe they went to a party and didn't invite me, or they forgot to text me back when they said, my brain went straight to this relationship's over. They don't want to be my friend. It's terrible. And it would fall through the cracks because I was living so all or nothing and OCD mindset, whereas they weren't. And so it was like a very disconnect. So a lot of my friendships didn't work because of that. Also, I was late a lot of times to things because of the OCD. I wasn't very present. I was more concerned about my well-being and not paying attention to other people. So for a long time, I struggled in relationships. So you are going to have shame, guilt, this idea that something must be wrong with me because of that. And then what I finally learned how to do is to recognize that I need to be a little bit more open with people. I don't have to say everything going on in my life, but just let them know that I'm going through some health stuff. It's why I'm not always around or why I'm kind of consumed with my own stuff. And that was enough for people. And people gave me a little bit more grace so I could work through the struggles. And then I started to notice that my friendships built better. So definitely.
I like this one. Can you speak to the difference between illness, anxiety disorder, and health OCD? I'm happy to say this. I think that there's no difference. I treat them all the exact same way. And the DSM parses out things in a ridiculous way, trying to say one of them is a fear that I might get something, and one is a fear that I already have something, and one is a fear that I have symptoms that might or might not be something if it's like somatic symptom kinds of things. But here's the deal. exposure and response prevention therapy is going to treat all of it. So I'm not a fan of the fact that we parse some of this out. I also disagree with DSM-5 that says illness anxiety disorder, which is called illness anxiety disorder, is not even listed in the anxiety disorders themselves, even though it's called illness anxiety disorder. So, Chris, I think you would agree with me even in a statement like this. We are concerned about OCD and less about the subtypes, right? Because we're going to do ERP for it. So you might say, oh, but I have relationship, or I have pedophilic OCD, or I have harm OCD, and that's the worst, and no, this is the worst, and no, that. But to us, none of them are the worst. To us, they're all obsessive compulsive disorder, and we're going to treat all of you with ERP.
Yeah, there's so, I mean, so I've ran groups for forever, and that's the biggest thing that I hear from people is, well, nobody's going to understand me because my OCD is the worst and it's so bad and nobody's going to be able to understand. Well, it's bad to everybody else. Whatever they're dealing with is worse to them, and they don't think yours is super bad. And yeah, I believe we get so fixated on the subtype. Sometimes there's unique stuff that come with a subtype. For instance,
Sure.
like, with pedophilia OCD, you're probably going to deal with a little bit more guilt and shame than somebody who obsesses about leaving their keys at a gym, checking like, that. But at the end of the day, they're treated the same. And when people get too consumed on the content, they start to relate to the content. And that's never good either, because then they start to kind of like, become meshed with the OCD. So it's really just about learning the main mechanics of OCD. You're going to have a lot of intrusive thoughts, feelings, etc., and doubts. And because of that, you choose to do something in response that just makes it worse. So once you learn the mechanics, I think it's valuable. So when new subtypes appear throughout your lifespan, you recognize it as OCD and hit it really hard with treatment ASAP versus thinking you have to go back to a therapist and start all over.
Yeah. I was saying, it might have been in the last one, I said, if you learn how to drive a Chevy and then someone gives you a Ford for Christmas, you don't have to go back and learn how to drive again. There might be some differences between the two, like where the windshield wiper button is, or where the lights are located, but you can learn that in about 5 minutes and yet still apply that you know how to drive to whatever car it is that you're going to be driving.
Absolutely. And to be honest, that's the problem though, is I think people start to get in this competition about, like, what OCD is worse and all of that. And so I think that analogy works perfectly. If you've learned to drive a car, you can most likely drive any other car. There might be difficulties because this car is a van and it's a little bit bigger and harder to park, but ultimately they're all going to have their own unique challenges. So I really advise people, because the reason I think it's important is because then people feel like outcasts in the OCD community. Nobody understands me, nobody gets me. And I'm like, they do. It looks different, but they do. They're your people. Go run towards them. I found another good question. Lauren at 7:14 your time. I think this is a good question because it's kind of what we're talking about with bad thoughts.
All right, I'll pull that up. Just a reminder to everyone, tonight's NoCD webinar, and NoCD is a downloadable app you can get through Google Play or iOS. If you're looking for teletherapy across the United States, Canada, Australia, or New England, the UK.
What happened to the old England?
I don't know. Where's the old England's on the other side of the pond over there. Yeah, this is the new one. Please feel free to reach out to us at nocd.com or download the app, and you can reach us there.
You're going to have us perfectionists panicking that we have to learn a new country on the globe.
Yes. Oh my gosh, there's a new country? Hold on.
New England. What happened to the old one?
Before you bring up Lauren, I just want to say one thing. I like what you said earlier, and I meant to say it and I got distracted. I've had a patient who also called the police on themselves because they'd heard there was a hit and run on the TV, on the news. And even though their car didn't match the description and their review of their car showed no damage to them whatsoever, and they hadn't actually driven that day either, they called the police anyway, just in case. They maybe drove and forgot, and maybe they didn't see the damage that was there, and maybe they misheard the description of the car.
Oh yeah, it's and what I always say is OCD is so evil for that. It's allowing somebody that they've gotten so bad with their OCD to a point that they are taking responsibility for a crime, and they're willing to cross the line and even call the police because they so badly want clarity, or they feel like they deserve to be punished. So that's why I always remind people, get help. I love that you guys are doing so much work with OCD, because it's like, get help. You don't want to live this lifestyle. It's so difficult. I think the biggest one that I will always forever stick in my brain is that a client that was convinced they committed a crime even though the crime happened before they were born. And I just remember thinking, like, that's how horrible this disorder is, when you get so untreated and misdiagnosed for so long that you start to, your insight becomes poorer and poorer to the point that you think you could commit a crime that occurred before you even born.
Yeah, because what if I forgot when I was born? And what if I really was alive then? What if I really did do it? And what if, and what if, and what if?
Oh, yeah. They were constantly seeking reassurance. They had a copy of their birth certificate. They would constantly check it. They had an article of the crime that happened, and they would constantly check back to reassure that, okay, I was born this year. The crime happened this year. I didn't do it, etc. It's terrible what this disorder can do.
All right. There's your Lauren question. Why are there daily thoughts that we have that are quote unquote normal and intrusive thoughts that are quote unquote bad? We know they're quote unquote bad because society sees them as quote unquote bad, but we're not able to label them as such. I get so confused by this concept is in the second thing.
Yeah, the reason I like this is actually Dr. Claiborne that talked about it before.
Our buddy Jim, yes.
Yes, I love him. You know what? The only reason I want the conferences to come back in person is on the Saturday Night Social. He wears those bunny ears.
He does wear his pink bunny ears. Yes.
I mean, I've never had the guts to ask him, like, what is that about? But I think I'm just going to remain and let that be a mystery. But you know, he said it once, and I kind of liked it, and it really helped me early on before becoming a clinician. But it was when I was going to conferences when I was still struggling, and he just said that there are no such thing as good thoughts and bad thoughts. They're just thoughts. A lot of it is how we respond to that. So sure, I mean, having intrusive thoughts about harming children are bad in the context of, if you turn around and do that to a child, then yes, society sees it as bad, like you're saying, Lauren. And plus, it's not going to be aligned with our value system. But our action we take to our thoughts has us give it a quote unquote normal or a bad kind of marker around it. And so when I started letting, like, one of, you know, if we're all being honest here, I mean, one of my intrusive thoughts, where I lived, my dad had forgotten to lock the bathroom door. So I opened the bathroom and he was using it, saw him, you know, going to the bathroom and started
in all his glory,
right? And started having intrusive thoughts about that. And so I remember just feeling so disgusted and grossed out, and it was like the worst thing ever. But when I started recognizing with my therapist, and then obviously, you know, Dr. Claiborne's words really stuck with me, it was starting to get to a point that it's like, just by merely having a thought that I didn't want, it was intrusive and popped in my head, that's all it is. It's a thought. And I'm going to have thousands of them in the next, you know, that day as well. And so when I stopped trying to grab each thought and categorize them and judge them and just let them sort of pass, they stopped spending so much time with me. And actually they would pop in my head and then fade, pop in my head and fade. And I could finally get to a point where they weren't consuming.
The power of the thought or the image or the urge, right? That feels so very real to people. Though it is not, but how real it actually feels to someone. And then how much people punish themselves over even having those things. And then, of course, the moment you try not to have them, you pink elephant yourself. And then now you just keep having them over and over again. So then it's more and more punishment, more and more recurrence. And it's a horrible cycle.
Oh, for sure. That's all you start to think about. I mean, that was the mistake I made. I think the golden mistake we all make with intrusive thoughts before we get treatment is, I don't want to think about my dad nude. So therefore, if the thought pops up, I'm going to push it away and distract myself. And that was my plan. Anytime I had a thought I didn't want, I was going to push it away mentally and distract myself. Doesn't work. In fact, it made it worse. So it's really learning to be able to have the thought and just not respond. You know, it's like the earlier person was saying about phone calls and not answering it. I mean, that's how I kind of started doing it.
Yeah. This one's interesting. Let me pull this up. Julia says, I can't get OCD diagnosed as a minor. I need my parents' supervision. The problem is that they probably blame me for having these thoughts and compulsions, right? I think that this is where you reach out maybe at school to a counselor or something like that, and you start talking to them first and see what kind of support they might be able to help you with. There's also some states that, depending on how young you are, you have privacy. Some go as young as 12, which allow you to.
12.
Is it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you can have a few sessions before your parents even have to know. Right now, sometimes that could be hard in terms of payment options or things like that, but check your state and really talk to one of your school counselors, and hopefully they'll be able to kind of guide you in the right direction to see what might come up.
Yeah, it's sad because I think what my initial thought was, make sure that that's not the OCD, that you're afraid, but we also have to take into context. I mean, cultural context. I know, for me, I'm Greek and Norwegian, and my Norwegian side, for whatever reason, values mental health, and they talk about what I do and they get it. But my Greek side of my family still doesn't believe in mental health. It's so weird. So when they find out what I do, it's not a real profession, I guess, is how they treat it. So it's we always have to remember, sometimes your parents, because of their background or how they were raised, aren't going to treat mental health the same way that it should or deserves to be treated. And so in California, you can get therapy without their help as young as 12. But I like your idea is to go to a counselor, because then the counselor, who's an adult and seen as a professional, may be able to explain it to your parents in a way that they understand it without maybe opening up about everything, and then potentially get you with a therapist. And I have clients all the time and I didn't tell my parent, I never brought my dad in to tell him, hey, I have sexual thoughts about you. So remember, you and the therapist can talk about the specifics and not give your parents 100% details.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one I literally was going to tell you to put up.
I had a feeling, so I did it for you.
Can you see my little pointer?
Huh?
Oh, because I had my pointer on it, so I was like,
oh no, I didn't see your pointer. But
we're like that.
All right, I have HOCD, and I'm afraid of making eye contact with men now. I can't even walk down the street without my anxiety going through the roof.
Absolutely. I mean, so HOCD, which we now call sexual orientation.
Sexual orientation OCD.
Yeah. So in this context, I'm guessing, Juan, you identify as a heterosexual male. You're getting very, very disturbed because you're having intrusive thoughts about intercourse or, relations or any kind of romantic connection with men.
Just unicorns dancing by as we walk past each other in a field or something. Who knows? Yeah, right. Yeah.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what ends up happening is certain things are going to trigger you. I know a lot of my clients that have this intrusive thought won't go to the gym because they're going to see other men working out, or they won't go to a pool or a beach because men will have their shirt off. And then it can get as bad as just seeing them down, the street, and you having to look down, etc. So that is the maddening aspect of OCD, is it starts to challenge your very understanding of who you are. And I think the reason sexual orientation OCD is causes so much distress is because people really have an identity, and OCD tells them there's something different. I think specifically, because society often sees any form of LGBTQ as a sin, I think a lot of people don't feel great about having intrusive thoughts of the same sex if it's seen as poor. But one, just like every other subtype, that's your goal, is to start to go back to make eye contact, go to the beach, go to the gym. And what I love about this subtype is I know when a client's really kind of conquered the majority of it, when they finally come in and they say, you know what, if I am gay, I've gone to a gay club because Chris, you've made me, or, a gay brunch or something. They look happy. And I would rather be a happy gay than a miserable, confirmed heterosexual who spends all day not walking down the street, not going to the gym, and miserable. So when you finally just don't care and need to label it and get so consumed about the title, you finally get to a point that you can just let it be. And then down the road, you get more clarity and you get the clarity you wanted.
OCD sure loves a title, doesn't it, Chris?
Yes. You have to have a title.
Right. You are this
live in
thing.
gray here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And I would say, to go even a little bit more deeper, as somebody who is part of the LGBTQ community, I mean, I really believe that we as a society have always had to have people label everything. And so OCD latches onto that. So if you feel like you can't really label yourself 100% with no doubt, and I have clients that I ask them, I'm like, what do you need to feel like you are 100% heterosexual? I need to be disgusted by men and think every woman's hot. And I'm like, well, good luck, because nobody feels that way. So it's recognizing the extremes that OCD wants you to go through. it's not for anybody. Without OCD, it's not going to get to that point either.
Yeah, and then the punishment aspect of it, until you feel, as you said, all women are hot and all men are disgusting. Until you feel that way, I'm gonna just tear the crap out of you, right? Until you do that. Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's just, you're never going to get to that extreme. The other thing that's always so weird about sexual orientation OCD that is maddening is, I'll have a client that's in a relationship with a woman, having sex with that woman, even with kids with that woman, but thinks they're gay because they have intrusive thoughts about men. And I'm like, how could you be gay but enjoy your company with women? I mean, at least you would be bisexual, don't you think? So that's why reality and rationale never works with OCD, is because somebody could have evidence blatantly in front of them and they still are questioning. They're still trying to figure it out.
Well, because there's never enough evidence. You can never have enough proof, but there can always be more doubt, right?
You can get Sherlock Holmes on the case and it will still not be enough proof. Still not enough proof.
Well, I've even said, like, for religious scrupulosity, your higher power themselves could show up next to you and say, "Hey, we're good," and you would say, "Are you sure?" I mean, really? Do you promise?
Yeah, Jesus, I get it, but I still have a few questions.
Yeah, right. It's just not enough. So.
Yeah.
I like this one from Christy. There's a lot of talk about intrusive thoughts, but what about mental compulsions? What if there aren't any visible external compulsions? How are mental compulsions identified?
Yeah, I would say that's why mental compulsions, it's challenging, is you don't have a tangible thing. So if I think my water is poisoned, I can literally open it up, drink it, or if I have a compulsion of avoiding this water or looking at the water to see if anything's in it. I mean, those are compulsions I can identify. Mental compulsions are differently because it's not this tangible thing. However, they are just as deadly. And I always tell people my mental compulsions were worse than my physical, because I could do mental compulsions all day. I couldn't get up and constantly check or hand wash, because you just can't do that all day, but you can mentally compulse all day. So how do we know we're having a mental compulsion? Well, I would say the easiest, most simplistic way is, if you're at a movie and you're supposed to be watching Spider-Man, or Venom actually just came out, you're supposed to be watching Venom, and the whole time you're not paying attention to the movie, and instead your head is stuck on something that triggered you earlier, and you're trying to get clarity, figure it out, push it away, reassurance, self-reassurance, self-soothing, all of that stuff. That's how you know it's a mental compulsion, is there's some thing that you feel like you have to fix or repair or protect yourself from or make better. And your brain is so focused on that, it's making it the most important, urgent thing. And therefore you cannot engage with real life. You can't be present. You can't do any of that. So, I know it's difficult because it's not tangible, but you start to get good at understanding what. Because if you find yourself sort of going through the motions of a conversation with a friend, or spacing out for 10, 20 hours while eating, thinking in your head, trying to fix and solve something, and it's not something fun, like you're not picturing yourself on The Voice and getting a turn from Ariana Grande. It's, did I kill that person when I was 7? Did I hit somebody on the way here? Do I think I'll go to heaven? I mean, it's your theme, and you're trying to get conclusions and answers, for sure.
Yeah, the idea that OCD is just physical is something that we have to continue to fight for people, because there's still so many therapists out there who, A, don't know enough about OCD, obviously, or B, who think OCD is just hand washing or straightening things, or C, say, well, if I can't see what you're doing, it's not OCD, it must be something else. So there's a lot of misinformation out there. And I agree with you, Chris. The mental compulsions are just as difficult as the physical compulsions to deal with. And they have the added special bonus of being able to happen without anybody else knowing that they're happening, right? And that's where it really is, with no matter what you are working on with your therapist, it's really on you to finally make the decision of, I'm not going to give in and do the mental compulsion. Or if I do, I'm going to do something to undo the mental compulsion right away, so that I'm back in it, in sitting with the doubt and the obsession, without sitting in the relief of having done the compulsion.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And the thing is, what I tell people also is, you want to get a therapist that understands that there is this whole mental component, because often therapists will label rumination or mental compulsions as obsessions. And the reason that that's dangerous is because the initial intrusive thought, that's the obsession. What you choose to do with it mentally outside of just letting it be, that's the compulsion. So if you had an intrusive thought that you're going to harm your sister at 8 a.m., and 5 o'clock you're still having that same thought and paying attention to it, that's not an obsession anymore. Now you've turned it into a compulsion because you're trying to get relief and push it away. So make sure you have a therapist that understands it. And I was going to say, you know, because you're saying that people think OCD is hand washing, you know, I love all the stuff that you guys are doing at NoCD, because I've watched some of the stuff, because I know some of the advocates, and I've seen stuff that you've done too. I tune into the ones I'm on, of course, but the ones I'm not on, I also watch, because I think it's so good that you have all these advocates that are talking about sexual intrusive thoughts, harm thoughts, etc. And I believe it's because when you know, I've done national television, I've done that stuff. It's hard as an advocate to go to the public and talk about having intrusive thoughts about, you know, and
Sure.
then people watching who don't get OCD thinking, "Ooh, does that guy want to harm children? What is it?"
Yeah.
But the more we get out there, the more people will start to understand what OCD truly is, and people can get the right care.
Yeah, it was fun doing our filming with Maria Bamford, where she was talking
Yes.
about her stuff and the intrusive thought list that she brought to us, and pulling people in from the crowd to talk to them about it, and you know, all the stuff you don't see on there that was edited out. Like, we did some great education that day, where people at first would say, "Oh, you know, OCD doesn't really exist," or "That's not OCD," and then by the end of it going, "Oh, okay, all right, I get it now. Okay." There's a lot more we have to do. I mean, you do great work with the International OCD Foundation. We're trying to do great work here at OCD as well too. We're all in the same bucket, trying to educate people here across the world about what OCD really is, because it's still a very misunderstood problem. Right?
Absolutely. It's funny because I actually went to a wedding, and one of the women there, she made these roses out of like construction paper, but I'm minimizing how beautiful it was. And she, you know, somebody said, "Oh, that's so intricate." And she's like, "Yeah, I have OCD." And it's like, you know, I'm not that guy where I'm like, "Stop, we got to have a whole discussion."
Yeah.
But later on, I was like, "Oh, I actually treat OCD and have OCD myself. So, you know, it sounds like you're really struggling with making those roses." And she's like, "Oh no, I love making them." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Okay. So you don't have OCD, you're just particular." And I did a little bit of education. She's like, "Oh, I'm going to stop saying that then, because no, I don't have that." So
Yeah.
it's sometimes those one-on-one conversations, but larger scale, what you're doing with Maria Bamford and things like that. That's how we're going to change the thought of what OCD truly is.
Yeah. Well, Chris, we've got a few minutes left. Is there one more that you wanted to pull out there, a question or anything that you wanted?
Yeah, there's two that I liked. So maybe we'll do rapid. So is it Freiheit? It's 7:53 p.m. How to deal with coincidental incidents.
There it is.
Yeah, couldn't read the name.
How do you deal with Freiheit? How do you deal with coincidental incidents that seem to confirm my worst fear coming true? They seem so uncanny that it's hard to shrug off rationally. How to design ERP for such magical thinking?
The reason I liked that one is because that was one of my earlier subtypes I struggled with. So an example is I used to have to go to bed at 12:45 and wake up at 9:45 if I didn't want my mom to die from a car accident. And then I had to call her at work and get a hold of her before noon. And I remember one day I could not get a hold of her. She had forgotten her phone at home and they couldn't page her. And when I finally got a hold of her at night, she was like, sounded kind of worked up. I was like, "What's happened?" She's like, "Oh, I almost got in a car accident on the way home." See, I told you this whole time.
Yep.
People thought I was crazy. Those kind of coincidences are going to happen. And what happens is, because of OCD, we actually scan and look for them. So what I had to realize is how many days went by that she didn't have an accident, or I fell asleep
Yep.
at 12:46 and it didn't happen, but I scanned
Yep.
for that one. So you got to remember that that's what your brain is doing, is scanning for those coincidences and ignoring all the 98% it doesn't happen, and trying to make that 2% the normal.
Yep. Great. And you
then
said there was one other one?
Yeah, because I always like talking about OCD and guilt. It's yep, at 7:54. How do you deal with the guilt that you did something selfish? And I'll let you read it. You read it better. But
No, selfish and stupid just because you needed clarity so bad.
Yeah, we do things when we have OCD, especially when it's really undiagnosed and untreated, that we look back and we're like, "What the hell?" And I've worked with clients that have engaged in same sex, physical, sexual intercourse to get clarity if they are gay or not, or people that will do something that they feel a lot of guilt about. And what I try to do, because I did things that I would have never done when I was with clear mind. I'm trying to think of something right now, but it's not coming to my head. But what I had to learn is that I did those things back when I was so confused and I wanted to get clarity so badly. A big one, I have clients that will watch a lot of porn and stuff like that for harm or sexual intrusive thoughts. And what you got to just do is just chalk it up to, you know what? I didn't know better. I did it as a compulsion. I now know that that's not the thing to do to get clarity, and I wouldn't choose to do it again. But the more time you go back in time and spend on it, the more you're going to hold that guilt to your current situation, and you're going to feel like you have to solve it, but you can't solve the past.
And remember, the DSM talks about OCD being about anxiety, but it is also about guilt and shame and disgust and everything too. There's one more I just wanted to do real quick. Puddin' Cakes want to know the link between trauma and OCD. And we know that there's a link between trauma and OCD. And we know that even if you don't necessarily meet the full criteria for post-traumatic stress disorder, if somebody's experienced a stressor in their life, that could be the thing that kicks off OCD. And OCD could be very advantageous of things and say, oh, wait, you went through a stressor. Well, I know how to prevent those from ever happening again. Start doing the compulsions that I tell you to do, and then everything will be fine or okay, and then we'll prevent you from ever having to deal with that ever again.
Yeah, I know for a lot of people, I think for me, my OCD was kind of manageable, and then I moved out. I went off to college. I had some like family stuff happen. A grandparent who I really loved died. I mean, so much bad things happen. Maybe not necessarily that fits the criteria of PTSD, but really difficult moments. And then OCD hit hard. So I think it kind of opens the floodgate.
Absolutely.
I feel like I'm being played off like if I was at the Grammy.
It's our Grammy time, Chris. Well, Chris Trondsen, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Tonight brought to you by NoCD. NoCD, a downloadable app you get through Google Play or iOS. Reach out to us at nocd.com if you're looking for teletherapy across the UK or Canada or the United States or Australia. We're here to help. We'll be back again next week. It'll be me talking to all of you again about all of your questions and everything. I want to thank my guest tonight, Chris Trondsen, for being here. A awesome Liz McInvale, by the way, that you do, just so you know. So, yes.
I don't know what Liz does, but that's what I imagine, right?
I like it. Chris, it was a pleasure. Thank you so much. All of you, have a great night. We'll see you again.
Thank you for